Yeah.
And then I think that Ed was probably one of the earliest people that was at Cai Cai. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Our team built that camp.
Peter Crummy.
Yeah, we were originally at Don Fu.
What's he say?
Go ahead.
Did you hear what he said, Steve? Go ahead, tell him again.
Don Fook.
Okay. Yeah, when I was there, we had 3 different designators, A411, 412, and 413. We got to Don Fu and transitioned with the folks from Okinawa. And then after a while, we moved a little bit east and built a camp on the Cai Cai River.
Here's the team that you went over with.
Yeah, that's correct.
And there you are.
Yeah.
And let's see what I've got. Okay, there were some amendments to it all. And how about that?
Yeah, there I am.
Okay.
Let me see.
That's that young fellow over
Oh.
there. You recognize that young fellow over there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that picture somewhere.
Oh, I love to have that picture. Could you send it to us?
You have to remind me when things settle down a little bit.
I will. I will.
Renee.
I will.
Hey. Mhm.
Okay. Well, video.
Uh-oh.
Slurp, welcome here. Roger, what you got in the background?
That's his wife, just a second. Well, hello, Butch.
Hello. What's your last name, Roger?
Wallace.
Okay.
Yeah, Wallace.
Yeah. I can't, can you guys see me?
I can see you.
Hold that pose.
Yeah, I don't know if I got a phone, a camera or not. You're Mr. Sherman, right?
I'm Steve Sherman, but you obviously have a camera because I see your picture.
Well, good. Well, I appreciate you, Mr. Sherman. I hadn't talked to anybody from Cai Cai in a long, long time.
Well, you got a couple of them right here.
Well, good.
Slurp, where's your picture?
I'm sorry?
Slurp, you don't have a camera on.
I see.
Am I there?
I know you disappeared completely.
Yeah, he's.
I can see him.
Yeah, now.
What?
I can see him.
He looks.
You see, no, I'm not talking about Roger Wallace. I'm talking about Dick James.
Oh,
Dick James, you just disappeared from here. Come back. Okay, well, we'll get him. Dick is kind of interesting. Since he's not here, I will read an advertisement for him. He wrote a series of books called Slurp Sends, which includes extensive, it's 4 books in the series. And there's some really good stuff that he was at. So I recommend them. Let's see, I've linked the books on the webpage, so you can get to Amazon for that. But Cai Cai.
Chair's not down all the way, that's why it won't come up anymore.
That was the time. David, welcome.
Yes, sir. I'm glad you're doing this for us.
Well, here it is. Go for it.
Okay, who do we have on?
Well, everybody's got a name tag on there. We're still missing a couple of people who popped in and disappeared.
There's some way you show everybody that's on there.
They will, it's right on the button right now, so more people will pop up.
Okay, well, I'm popped up as David Miller, and
There
I
you
was
are.
there in 1969 and early 70 before being wounded and sent back to the States.
Okay,
No,
let me try to proceed from Ed over there, who was talking about building the camp.
Okay,
Ed DeClose, so was when the camp originally opened up.
Hey, Steve, I have a sort of an off-topic question for you, but it's related to my team. On Christmas Eve of 1964, we took part in a helicopter POW rescue down in the Kamau Peninsula. Came up with a dry hole because they waited too long on the intelligence, and apparently they moved the guy. And I never heard anything more about that, whether he had ever been repatriated or just one of those missing guys. And the other thing is he could have been a merchant mariner rather than a military guy.
Oh,
Did you ever hear anything about that?
right off the top of my head, I can't, can't match it with anything. But call me sometime when it's not on a Wednesday or Thursday, and I'll go back into the core area history and see what I can find. Because I've got a lot of.
It was also the. Yeah, it was
that-
also the first time I believe that they used tear gas in in an air assault. And there was plenty left over for us.
At that time, you were functioning essentially as an early Mike Force, I believe, Task Force Green, that you were operating out of.
At that time, we were up in the B team up in Long Swin.
Yeah, but Fabi was assigned as and that team that you were on was originally assigned as Task Force Green, and they function essentially as an early Mike Force.
Yeah,
I've got some.
I just remember a lot of mud.
Ah,
All right, so here we are in 65. Got anybody here from 65 or 66?
66.
66, Roger. Okay. So what do you remember from that period of time?
Yeah,
Well, tell them you were too.
yeah, I was there in 65. Like I say, we built that camp.
Right.
You built Cai Cai?
Yeah, I left in June.
In June of 66?
65.
65, not 66. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't remember you. I would arrived at Cai Cai from SFOB late December of 66 and was there through March of end of February, 1st of March of 68. I was at Cai Cai 14 months.
wow.
Is
Oh,
that,
lucky.
do what?
He said you were lucky.
I'm sorry.
He said you were lucky.
Oh, well, most of the time it was a good camp.
Yeah.
We did some work on it.
All right. When at some point you decide that camp was really built for people or best for people with web feet.
Yes. I looked at some of the stuff. I saw where Miss Martha Ray, Colonel Ray had a fella had toured with her. Well, she came to Cai Cai at least twice and maybe 3 times while I was there. One time we were flooded and we cut the legs off the back of the chairs so she could sit level on top of the team house.
In the first volume of Green Bay magazines, there's an article here, is its best.
That's it. That is Cai Cai.
And then a couple of other pictures here. It's an interesting article.
How do I get a hold of some of that, Mr. Sherman? I'm gonna tell you guys, I'm gonna say this. I spent a lot of time putting this time of my life out of my life, and I've missed a lot. But I'm mentally in pretty good shape with it now, finally. So I'm really anxious to talk to some of the guys that was there at Cai Cai and learn some things that I've forgotten.
Well, that's what you got here, guys from Cai Cai, but with me as the only exception. The pictures you see are from the '66 Green Bay magazine.
66.
And they said at that point they decided to turn the camp into a floating camp. So was that a project that you were working on?
No, not the way I remember it, no.
Slurp,
Yeah, I'm here.
good. All right, Bill Elliott, you should unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
Am I not on anymore?
No, you are on. I don't know what have you got? You haven't got all these people on the screen with you?
Yes, I do. I've got some, got Bill Gerhardt, Steve Lucas, D. James, Larry Beats.
Okay, so you shouldn't have a problem with that.
There's Beats. Been a long time.
But who's talking to me? I can't see you.
That's Bill Elliott.
You know, I have a camera, Larry.
Yeah, where you at? I'm looking at Steve.
Well, there's a bunch of other
There's Steve
people.
Lucas.
If you get your camera hooked up, that'll be good. All right, so we're there into '66 with Roger Wallace. And we haven't quite determined who did the engineering to make that. So who comes after that? In 67?
I was at MEDA in '67.
That's BDOS for another session tomorrow. We're doing Cai Cai right now. So when were you at Cai Cai? Lee?
No, I wasn't in Cai Cai.
Okay, you're just sort of visiting here. Okay, not a problem. Somebody else from 67?
I was there in the last half of it. I spent the last half of '67 there.
Lieutenant Daniels, is that you?
Yeah.
Were you RXO?
No, you did.
Yeah.
Roger, that was me. You hear on the voice. If you
Uh-huh.
respond to a voice who can't see me, that was me. I was there in the last half of '67 with you.
Yeah, you were RXO, right?
I was your CO.
CO.
I was
Captain
your commanding
Daniels.
officer. How soon they forget?
Yes.
Yeah, I was the commanding officer there, and we had a couple of XOs. And about the floating camp, what I can remember is I think in the first half of '67, what happened was that triangle, you see with all that water in it, was built up, the berm was built up of the fort higher, and the front gate was filled in. So actually, water could be kept out of the camp during 67. But if you were in the team, we pumped it out. The pumps kept going all the time.
All the time. 3 pumps.
3 pumps. No, yeah, you remember 3 pumps. And if we in the team house, when you went to bed, you know, during the rainy season, you were, I don't know how many feet under the water. You know, how many feet under the water. And I know the tactical thing about this is nobody knew but the team is when they built the berm back up, we put C4 in it, and we ran the wires into the team house, you know, and we ran them under my bunk with the leads.
Exactly.
And I remember the demo guy, I can't think of his name right now. We kind of, he says, you know, Dawee, I'm not going to give you the hell box. I keep the hell box, but if it goes, if we have to blow the berm and run for it or swim for it, no running, you'd have to swim. I mean, there was no place for 80 miles you could stand up and not drown. You know, in the rainy season, he says, you know, we're going to have to swim for it. And I remember why we had the wires under my bunk, because if they got over the walls, if they breached the walls, and we were just going to blow the berm, and they'd be in the water too, and everybody be in the water, the bad guys and the good guys, that they couldn't see him. They could see him into his room, the way his room was situated, but they couldn't see me the way mine was with my desk. And that was the vote. No other big deal. Okay.
You know, we had claymores too, and when that front gate was redone, if I'm remembering right now, a fellow by I think he was the engineer, Davenport, he was, we were redoing that machine gun bunker up there, and he uncovered a nest of cobras in the very point there where the gate was, and he was about 5 foot in a hole there. He weighed about 240, 50 pounds, and he come out flat-footed. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, his nickname was Mop.
Mop Davenport, that was him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, who was a commander? Was Gerhardt was a commander prior to you?
No, that's
I
Gerhardt.
am Gerhardt. No, who was
We had-
George, I don't have it in front of me. Who did I replace? I can't even remember how the replacement went. I don't know even if I saw him.
Captain George was there when I arrived in December of
George
'66
was before Bill.
from Georgia with boiled peanuts. That was Captain George.
Graham George.
Yes,
He
good
was there
guy.
before you were, Bill, and Paul Dill
Okay.
followed you.
Then we had Captain Gerhardt,
Yeah, that's me.
and we had a fellow there before you. You were talking a while ago about the water. We also had an airstrip. We had an old crashed C1 C119 out there, I think, or one. We had an old airplane crashed out there, and we took deck cord and cut the wings up on it and made doors for our bunkers. The 81 millimeter mortar bunker and the 4 deuce mortar bunker. That was prior to you, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was prior to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was prior to me.
Was the 105 there? Have we acquired it yet?
Yeah, the 105 was there. Thank God for it. The 105
Yeah.
was there.
Yes.
Yeah, man. If 105 hadn't been there, we would have been in deep doo-doo-doo.
Yeah. Yeah. And we also had a naming circle to lay that thing in with.
Yeah, you sure did. Yeah, you could. Yeah, but there, you know, when we got attacked a couple of times, all you had to do was sight right down the barrel. I mean, you know, right down the barrel and pull it. Yeah.
Yeah, we had charges laid for every hot spot in our technical area of operation there. All we had to do was get the right cartridge and we could shell any place they could hide.
Yeah.
We already had them charged up, especially with the 81.
Yeah, we had everything. Yeah, because of you guys and the people that followed, maybe when I was there, we had everything zeroed in big time.
Was
I'm not getting them all.
The Congressional Medal of Honor winner,
Gordon
was
Yatama.
was he before you or after you?
He was
During
there with
you, I
me.
mean. The one?
He was there when I was there, and he you know, when I came, he was there and won the Congressional Medal of Honor, and he's all part of that what happened in November, December, and whatever, and that got to be a very uncomfortable deal for Congress to give him the Congressional Medal. You know, if you look it up, he was 23 years old.
Yes, sir.
And when he killed the last 17 with his bare hands, and he's the only Congressional Medal of Honor winner that nobody was on the ground. Usually with Congressional Medal of Honor, you've got a witness on the ground that can witness. Everything we've got is from the air. They have videos of the air of what he did. And of course they wanted him alive. They wanted us, all of us alive. There was something like an unbelievable amount of gold on my head, his head, you know, if they got us alive. And, you know, I spent the last 3 months with an M26 grenade strapped to my chest. Because I told my wife.
I don't remember all that, huh?
Yeah, and my team did. I mean, you know, it didn't come off in the shower. And I told
I
my
was
wife,
there when Adama got killed, but I don't remember all that. And I have read and reread. I'm assuming that you were the one that put him in for a medal, and but it's nothing stated in there about, you know, where he was when he did all that.
That is the problem.
You know, he was. Can we talk about that?
I don't know. Steve, you want us to talk about that? How safe is this to talk now?
Look, Henry's written his memoirs already, so at this point, anything that's unsaid about Vietnam should have been said.
It's okay to talk.
All right, look, here's a map. Here's where I have Cai Cai. Here's the Cambodian border. That's pretty damn close.
5/8 of a mile.
Okay, well, okay, let me tell you how it all comes down. Okay, I'm gonna tell you how it all comes down. In November, you know, Jackie Kennedy is in Cambodia. Okay, she's the unofficial ambassador, you know, for the United States here and there and everything. Of course, she speaks French fluently. She presents herself fluently, and everybody thought she would go to Cambodia. And at that time, you know, Cambodia is very much against us being in the war. I mean, the rhetoric is very, very high, and she goes there anyway, and they treat her like royalty, and so on and so forth. Well, the bad news about it, Steve just said, that's pretty close to the border. When she hits Cambodia, the first orders we get from high up, not just us, not just Green Berets, but we're hugging the border, but for everybody, is there will be no military action within 2 clicks of the border. Okay. Of course, Charlie gets that memo before we did. Which, you know, and Charlie always gets it, you know, 72 hours before we get the memo out of Saigon. Charlie gets the memo. And so all that meant was he just walked in toward us. Well, you know what that is in the military. You know, you can keep somebody 2 clicks away. You know, that's a big deal. But if they can push the border towards you, if I'm 1,200 miles, I'm 1,200 meters from the border, and they could push it in, knowing I'm not allowed to fight them, we got a problem, and we got it. And there was some stuff in November, and then December is when the really hit, and it all hit, and I was due to rotate back. All this is circumstantial. My rotation date, I came in December of 66. So I'm supposed to go home in December of 67. Okie dokie. And there were probes all up and down because they were testing, getting ready for TET. Now TET, you know, the big deal about TET was January, February, March of 68. So I don't know how Steve's view on this is, but between November, December, January, February, and March, those 5 months, the history of who was doing what with whom and why are very sketchy, including who's with us, who replaces whom, who got medevaced. You know, in the first skirmish fight, my XO, Bob Kemp, was evacuated. I don't know if I had a replacement XO. I don't know if they gave me one. I don't know who I was fighting with. I don't know, Roger, if you were with me. All I know is we were fighting.
Yes, I was there the day. As a matter of fact, my blood tap, if you'll remember, at the very back of the team house where we exited for the 81 millimeter mortar, they, in the back of the team house is where Lieutenant Kemp was on a stretcher waiting for a medevac. I was hooked to him. The medic hooked me to him. I stayed hooked to him for 4 hours while we waited on the medevac, giving him blood.
I remember. Holy shit.
Yeah, and when we finally got him out of there, without getting, without going into a lot of detail, my memory may be bad on a lot of things. A lot of things I do remember, and a lot of them I remember very well, I think. But I can't remember right now who the replacement was for Lieutenant Kemp. I cannot remember, but Kemp survived. Kemp run out the door, the front door of the team house toward the dispensary, and run into a round. We were being shelled.
Brent 75s, yeah.
He had his flat vest on, but he didn't have it zipped, and he got shrapnel all down his front and his arms. He was bleeding pretty good, losing a lot of blood, and we couldn't get a medevac because he got hit early in the morning before daylight, and then we were still being shelled and had a hard time getting support. But if I remember right, Adama was a concern for me because a few years back, I was trying to look online, and Adama had 2 daughters. And one of those daughters I saw where she had reached out to try to get a hold of somebody that served at Cai Cai with Kemp. And I tried unsuccessfully for several months to get in touch with her. I never have or never did since. But you talk about that being sketchy. The account that I've read about Adama and how he was awarded the Medal of Honor is a lot of it is just not exactly true. And I think because of where he got killed, him and Kellikini, they were together. Kellikini had my M16 when he got killed. I had been on a chow bus in Saigon, just got back that morning. And, but I really wanted to get a hold of his daughter and tell her my memories of what actually happened that day.
Yeah.
Look, Lieutenant Captain Daniels, we had a witness for that lived a few days, if you'll remember. I don't know, but Sergeant Ben, our intelligence, he was a Tampa platoon leader along with me, and he was wounded, shot several times, but he lived several days. He was drugged back to the canal, to the ditch by the canal there, I think by Doc Murray, I think, back into South Vietnam, out of Cambodia.
Let me
I
jump in
want to
here
ask
for a
if we
minute.
could get, if we could talk about it, because Adama was killed in Cambodia under a Cambodian flag at the flagpole.
That's right.
His
You asked-
muscles was cut out of his arm. He, whoever finally killed him, shot him right between the eyes and cut the muscles out of both his arms, trying to, they felt that they could, we were told that they felt that they could gain his fighting strength and prowess when they mutilated his muscles in his arms.
Well, you asked a while ago who replaced Kemp when Kemp was wounded.
Who?
Who replaced Kemp? The
I'm not
XO
sure.
Kemp.
I
Well,
can't remember.
That was me. I came out the next morning. He was
Who are you?
Daniels.
Daniels, Lieutenant Daniels, yes. You were our XO, weren't you?
Yeah, I became the XO, and Kemp came back to the camp about 2 or 3 months later, and he became the CAPO, and I
Yes.
stayed on as the XO. But on that operation at the border, Intama, we losing something here.
Okay, he's gonna show us something.
I'm still seeing Mr. Duclos and Mr. Sherman. I can hear you.
Okay, we back. Anyhow, Intama and Kalakini were with the recon platoon,
Yes.
and they were. It was Intama's decision as to what route they would take to get up there, and they were to be the blocking force, and they were to come in from the east right up to I think the name of that village was Tenbao or something, right at the point of the little triangle.
Yes, at the confluence of the Cai Cai River and the Phu Quoc Canal in Cambodia.
Right. So they came in from the east going west. They were to be the blocking force. And there were 2 companies with me, along with Nutilla, the team sergeant Gann, demo man Hernandez. Was it Hernandez? Rodriguez? And the medic Murray.
Doc Murray.
Yeah, we were to go through the base of the triangle and push the VC north, and hopefully the blocking force could kill as many as possible. Well, what happened at 0630 hours, that's when Intama and his group initiated contact with the enemy. And that's when myself, the 2 companies, and the 4 Americans with me were to start moving through the little triangle heading north. Well, the LLDB got on the phone and told the LLDB that was with me, who was an aspirant, said, don't go. So there was a lot of back and forth traffic. Paul Dill was the CO at that time. And the date of this action was January the 18th, 1968. Well, the LLDB and the CIDG bought the two companies. So the 5 Americans, the 5 of us, we started assaulting the little triangle heading north. By that time, Item and Kalakini and their recon platoon had been pushed into Cambodia. And they were right around the base of the Cambodian flagpole.
At the Cambodian outpost.
Yeah. Now the flagpole, as you remember, because we used to sit in the tower and we would use that flagpole as a reference. They moved that flagpole from within the Cambodian compound, which was actually an old French fort, moved it across the river and mounted it there. So Heinemann, Kalakini, and their recon platoon were on that side of the river, and the Cambodians and the VC were all in the Cambodian outpost shooting at them. And as we moved north, the VC started leaving and swimming the river and going into the Cambodian outpost. And then we got up to the border and it was just like a golf course between where we were, because we were standing on the border, and where all the bodies were in Cambodia, and over to the left was the Cambodian outpost. But it was like a golf course between us and them. And we had some couple VNAV Sky Raiders that came on station, and then they dropped 250s in the little triangle. I remember there was 5 of us in a hole about as big as an ashtray, and those damn 250s were going off all over the place. And then they left, and then 2 American fighters came on station.
Yes, sir.
Well, I tried to get them to bomb the outpost, the Cambodian outpost, so we could proceed into Cambodia to get the dead and wounded. And the order came back from Saigon, no, we're not going to drop any ordnance in Cambodia. So I asked the fighters if they could just make a very low pass over the Cambodian outpost, and without dropping anything, and hopefully they would think the next pass it'd be dropping bombs and destroy their fucking asses. Well, that's what they did. I looked out to the east, and there was 2 little dots coming over the horizon. You couldn't hear shit until they got right to you. And then they kicked in afterburners and went over to the outpost, and then zoomed on, and the Cambodians backed down and the VC backed down. So Doc Murray at that point stood up and yelled, "Boxe, boxe." And then that enabled me and Murray and Nutella to cross the border. We had our weapons down in an unthreatening manner to start getting to the dead and wounded. And then Gann and Hernandez, I keep wanting to say Hernandez, he was our demo heavy weapons man, senior weapons man, an E7. They stayed at the border in the VC trench. And then we called back to camp and requested boats be sent up to get the dead and wounded out. Ainama was already dead. Kalakini was dead. Ben was barely breathing, and we had 19 other wounded and probably about 10 killed. But Ainama's body was not mutilated, because myself and Nutella carried him to the river where the boat was. And we rode all the way back to the camp with him and Kalakini in the boat.
Yes, and our assault boats.
Right, yeah. And
fiberglass boats with 40 horse Johnson motors, what we came up there in.
Yeah, and we had, I put Ainama in for the Congressional Medal of Honor, and their 2-4, that was the only one that was ever awarded without an American eyewitness.
Yeah.
all we had was anecdotal witnesses and the radio traffic. And at the last point, Heinemann radioed, these motherfuckers are going to try to capture me. And when we got there, he had an old M1 Garand. He got it from one of the troops, apparently. And the damn stock was busted off that thing. And he was pretty well beat up. And he had a bayonet wound through his left jaw that came out the back of his head.
Yes.
But it took 2 years, and we used the indigenous eyewitness statements from the recon platoon wounded for the eyewitness statements. But he finally got it. About 10, 15 years ago, one of his daughters reached out to me, and I talked with her. His ex-wife never would talk to anybody about him because she had filed divorce papers against him about 2 or 3 weeks before that January 18th, 68 operation. And she just never wanted anything more to do with him. So that was that operation.
Yeah, I remember some of the conversations that night. I remember one item was, I remember it's around 10 o'clock. I don't remember times exactly right, but around 10 o'clock, he said, Pelleghrini's been shot. And then sometime earlier in the morning, I'm wanting to say 1:15 or so, his radio transmission was, Pellegrini is dead. I'm out of ammunition and I'm going into hand-to-hand combat. That was the last we heard from him at the team house.
Yeah. Now Larry Peets.
Can I interrupt just a second, Tommy?
Sure, go ahead.
I would like Bill Elliott to get his daggone camera working so I can see him.
Who?
I'm sorry, Larry, I don't have a camera. My monitor's not set up for a camera, but I'll guarantee you the next time we go around, I'll have a camera set up so we can talk and see one another.
Okay. Well, I was just going to add a little deal about the Cambodian outpost because Bill Elliott and I have an intimate knowledge of that. We put together
Did we ever?
a little. Yeah, we put together a little forward outpost that was about 800 meters from that Cambodian outpost. And we had an old M1D Garand with a Weaver scope on it. And we used to de-link 30 caliber ammunition and shoot through the gun aperture in that tower at the Cambodian outpost. And we could watch the tracers go right through it. So that was kind of cool. But
When were you there, sir?
well,
What
I was
year?
there in 68. I was there,
68. Okay.
yeah, from, I don't know, I guess it was about June of 68 till February of 69.
You want to see
He
everybody
ended
at
up
once?
blowing the hell out of that outpost. It does not exist anymore. It didn't when we left.
We used to do the same thing in December of 66 and January of 67. We had a lot of traffic going up and down the canal, and we, the 50 caliber in the tower, we'd take our tracers and with the starlight scope, they'd be smoking cigarettes, and we could fire a couple of tracer rounds over there and the cigarette butts would fly up in there. And but that was in 66 and 67. In our water tower, we had a 50 caliber. Was it still there in 68?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, our team sergeant was Zeon Nowak at the time, and he used to sleep in that tower.
Really?
Yeah, and then one of us, whoever could stand him long enough, would go up and sleep 2 or 3 days manning it with him. But you couldn't take but 2 or 3 days of him, and he'd drive you nuts.
It got harder on you guys, I think, after we left. I think y'all had a lot more activity, probably maybe than we did early on. In 67, we had it pretty rough during the Tet Offensive. That's when we got a report of we got a report of a downed pilot that was being transferred to Phnom Penh in Cambodia. And we went up, Sergeant Murray Bates, Gilchrist, and myself. We went up with the same Tambo platoon that got annihilated, Sergeant Venn and them. We went up and walked into an ambush on the canal up there. That's when I was running for a tree line. We walked into an ambush from the Cambodian side, and we were on the canal bank, and we had to seek cover in the tree line through a minefield, and I stepped on a mine, and Sergeant Murray Bates came back, throwed me on his shoulder, and carried me to the tree line. That was during the Tet Offensive of '67.
Yeah. Well, we finally got the Air Force to put a bunch of 1,000-pounders on that Cambodian outpost. And I was in that.
No kidding.
Yes. I was in that gun tower with the 50 looking through a telescope, and we had it fixed on that Cambodian outpost. And then boys and those phantoms come through and put them 1,000-pounders in there. And Noack and I were up there, and we looked through that telescope again, and I thought the concussion must have jarred it offline because there wasn't anything there. And we got to scanning the telescope back and forth, and there still wasn't anything there. Well, about 2 weeks later, we get word that the Cambodians are up there, want to talk to us. So the CO at the time was Leo Lynch, and I was the XO. And Lynch was going up there, and I said, look, I got to go with you. And he says, we can't both be off site at the same time. And I told him, I said, you know, if we get captured, it's not going to matter a hell of a lot. And so he and I both went up there and talked to the Cambodians. Well, the Cambodians didn't speak Vietnamese, and the interpreter didn't speak Cambodian, but they could both speak French. And so all they wanted us to do was pay for rebuilding the outpost. And I had shot a roll of film and still had it. And when we got back to camp and called in what we'd done, the CIA was out there the next day. And so they confiscated my film. They told me they was going to give it back to me, but all I got back was just a few pictures that didn't amount to anything. But it was quite a time.
I would have loved to have seen that thing flattened, I'll tell you.
Well, it not only was flattened, there was just a great big hole in the ground where it used to be.
That's where I was awarded my Bronze Star, was up there. We had captured a bunch of sampans and up the river, and we were trying to get by the Cambodian outpost, and they had a fish trap there, and we had 53 sampans and boats full of rice and marijuana and everything else that we were trying to get back down river. And we took a lot of flack out of that thing. The whole 14 months I was there, that was where we had more problems there than we did at the Cai Cai village itself.
Yeah. And Mr. Elliott, you can probably confirm most of what I just said, can't you?
Oh yeah, I flew a VR. I flew with the VR the next day after all the bombing, and it looked like a plowed field in Illinois, central Illinois, when we overflew that area. It was just nothing there, just plowed ground.
We had, speaking of Gordon Yetman, I never knew him, and he was killed before I was ever out there. But several years ago, they did a gala event honoring him out in Las Vegas at the Riviera Hotel before they tore that down. And Tommy Daniels and I and Leo Lynch and what was El Supremo's name, Tommy?
Dick O'Connor.
Yeah, Dick O'Connor. we all ended up out there, and Lynch had contracted throat cancer. And when we all left, that was the last time I saw him alive.
Is
He
that
passed
Lynch?
away.
Lynch
Yeah,
is dead.
yeah, he died about 10 years ago, Tommy. He died not long. He probably lasted about a year and a half after we all left Las Vegas that time.
Damn, hate to hear that.
Does
Yeah.
anybody know, what happened to Sergeant Gann?
Dan went back to B-43 after he left Cai Cai, and I saw him at Fort Bragg, probably 4 years after that. And he was running a bar. He was running a bar in Fayetteville at the time.
Really? Is
He
he alive or dead, or does anybody know?
I don't know.
passed away in 2013 in Fayetteville.
Did he?
Retired as
I'll tell you,
sergeant.
can I tell y'all a kind of a funny story about Sergeant Gann?
Why not?
Why not?
When he came to us, I think he had been in country up in I Corps or 2 Corps or something earlier, but anyway, he was in the 82nd Airborne, and on his left arm, he had a set of boots with jump wings and had 82nd Airborne tattooed under the bottom, you know. Well, Gilchrist let me do it. Sergeant Gann, when we were at Cai Cai, not too many people knew this because we kept it a secret, but he wanted that he'd got in special forces, so he wanted that 82nd Airborne gone. Gilchrist, medic out of California, he oversaw the operation, but I removed that 82nd Airborne from the bottom of those boots under. I cut it and tapered it on the ends, then skinned him back about a ½ inch all the way around and pulled his skin together, sewed it up. He never even really got sore on him.
Let me jump in here, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Bob Waldron. I was the medic there at that time. I was the medic at Cai Cai. See, I got in Nam in October of '67 and, bounced around to get out there. And I think it was about 2 weeks later, I was at Cai Cai, and I was there until August. And I want to say hello to Steve Lucas. I see your picture there, Steve. You haven't said anything, but I'm glad to see you.
Well, same here, Bob.
You
I was
were,
looking
when I
forward
was
to it.
getting ready to leave, yeah, you came in and took over. So I'm glad you're still around, brother.
Yeah. In fact, Bob, I have a
Huh?
picture of you when you were getting on the helicopter to leave.
Oh my goodness.
And you turned around and flipped us all off with a big grin on your face.
Oh, I wouldn't do that.
So if you contact me, I will get you that picture.
I will do, and I've got a really nice picture of you on a slide that I have to turn it into something I can send. Anyway, back to Gann's tattoo. You know, Roger, we did keep that a big secret because I was the medic that took that tattoo off of him, and you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And, like
I thought it was Gilchrist. Was that you, Bob?
Actually, I think he had an infected scratch on it, and we had to treat it. But yes, you're right, and I did remove that tattoo. I do not remember Gilchrist. That name doesn't ring a bell with me. Steve, I don't know if you were the medic then. It might have been Mike Roxby. Mike Roxby was there with us for quite a while.
Roxby. Roxby was there before I got there.
Right. He and I were together
Roxby's.
for quite a few months, and Roxby was killed in an airplane crash in civilian life. I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years later. I happened to be reading a newspaper account. He had become a private pilot, and his airplane vanished over in the Bermuda Triangle. He was from Cocoa Beach, Florida, and I happened to catch that, so I was very sorry to hear that. I have a couple of memories from the Anktum incident. Captain Gerhardt, I do remember you, sir. You were my CO when I got there. And Tommy, I'm afraid I don't have much of a recollection of you. Maybe I was in trouble all the time and nobody talked to me. I don't know.
Well, I was there on the cover.
I was back at the dispensary when all of that went down. I know Murray was out there. Davenport was out there, I believe. Anyway, I remember it was daylight when, at least I believe it was daylight when everybody came back in the boat. And Anktima, I never saw Anktima's body. By that time, he was in a body bag, and there was, you know, he was dead. So there was no reason to look. I remember Nutilla was very emotional. He thought that that Kalakini was still alive. He told me that he thought Kalakini had been breathing in the boat. So we checked him over very carefully, and I'm afraid he wasn't breathing. And as a matter of fact, we had a hard time finding a wound on him. My recollection is there was a small wound over, I'm going to think it was his right kidney. And we theorized that it was a shrapnel wound and that he bled to death internally. It probably hit his renal artery, possibly even the aorta, and he bled to death over time out there. But he was not, there wasn't any other marks on him. It was a very sad thing. I remember Sergeant Vin was very beat up. He had an open fracture of his, I'm going to say it was the right leg. It had been splinted by guys in the field with a rifle, probably an M1. And he had other wounds. The big concern, though, was his femur. He was not bleeding profusely. He was lucky his femoral artery was still intact. I remember we spent a lot of time splinting him up, and we got him medevac. I don't remember him talking. I don't remember if he, I think he was partially conscious. You know, memories get clouded and mixed up over time, I'm afraid. But he was medevaced, and my understanding was that he died in the hospital, I guess in An Tho, Vietnamese hospital, 4 or 5 days later from an embolus, possibly blood clot, whatever. As we all know, their medical care was not wonderful. I remember as time went on, if we decided we could treat a wound on the Vietnamese folks from shrapnel or bullet wounds or whatever, we made every effort to keep them, because sending them on was, even though they had doctors and nurses and higher level medicine, the care was not very good. They were overwhelmed, overloaded. But the other thing is, you mentioned, I think it was Roger, you mentioned that that Lieutenant Kemp had a number of wounds on him from a mortar blast. I remember that attack, and I remember exactly what you said. His flak jacket was not zipped up, but from there, my memory and your memory differ. I remember probing the wound. He had a very small wound in his belly, and I remember probing it, and we determined that the wound, that the shrapnel was still there. It was very shallow, and that we believed it had not penetrated his muscles. And we did medevac him the next day in the morning, but I do not remember him getting an IV, certainly not blood. If we did give him an IV, it would have been, you know, probably D5W or normal saline or something. But I don't remember doing that. He was not in a lot of pain, and it wasn't bleeding much. So our memories
No,
are
he wasn't. You're right. He wasn't bleeding. He was just oozing. But it was, I guess it was you or somebody put a needle in my arm and a needle in his arm, and I gave him blood back in the.
I just don't remember that. I don't know. That might have been. I don't remember if Murray was there or.
Yeah.
Do y'all remember Doc Dryden?
Hey, listen, guys.
John Dryden.
Both of you, Roger and Bob, listen. Do you remember the thing for me in the middle of everything that was funny? Because I was there kneeling beside him. A lot was going on, and the Cambo, you know, shit had hit the fan, and here we go. But he was worried about his balls being shot off, and he had, I don't know which one of you. He says, check and see that I'm okay, you know. And they checked and so that's okay. And even though everything was going on, he says, oh, okay. And so I remember that. And when I saw him again, I kidded him, you know. I talked to him again, and I just want to say one thing. All this, and I'm so happy, you know, Tommy, I don't remember you coming out there. I don't remember what happened. I was probably, frankly, still in shock from what happened, you know, that
Ugly day.
keep mom and replace. But then, you know, when I rotated out, when it happened to you guys with Yatama and everything, I heard from somebody, I don't know who it was at B Team, wrote me a personal letter, you know, and after the Yatama thing, saying how that had gone down. And I've tried to find that letter and what happened. But I went from that letter, I went 44 years without hearing anything from any of you. Now, it's partly my fault. I was so, whatever I was done. I was just done with it. I came back, didn't join a veterans organization, didn't do anything. It went on in my life. And it wasn't until I got cancer and back in 2012, and my cancer doctor went through all of it. And he says, well, that's, you know, health insurance was squirrely. And he says, well, they're always going to take care of vets. And I says, well, I've never gone there. I've never turned myself in to VA or anything. He says, take these photos, go in and at least get in line, turn it in and go in. And so I got on the roster. And right after that, I don't know exactly how it happened, but back in 2012, Steve found me. And it had been 44 years since the letter about the catastrophe or the whatever, the bad news deal with us being in the wrong place by accident, with, you know, and finding out anything. And then Steve, you know, talked to me in 2012, and then we went 10 years until now. And he found me again, said, guess what we're going to do? And I couldn't believe this, you know, that we were going to do this. So I am so grateful, you know, and Tommy, I'm so grateful for what you did, putting him in. And I knew about his daughters, and I did know about that situation with his wife. I did know about the equivalent of a Dear John letter, you know, and that all wrapped up in my memories of, this is just too hard to take. And, you know, when we got out, nobody even, they didn't have a diagnosis for post-traumatic stress. And I surely had it, didn't know I had it, fought it my own way, you know, solved it my own way. But one thing that'll do is make you not want to revisit any of that. And I didn't. And I always feel that I need to apologize that I didn't find you. I mean, I somehow just feel guilty that I didn't find you, but I couldn't. Thank you.
Your story sounds just like mine, Cap. I mean, I felt the same way. When I was out, I was done. I went back to college. I realized very quickly I didn't want to tell anybody that I was a veteran. I mean, it was horrible. And then, you know, I drank a little bit in Vietnam, and I started drinking a lot more. So I understand, again, my story similar is I didn't deal very effectively. I didn't think I had any issues, but I finally stopped drinking about almost 30 years ago now, and I don't drink anymore. So I wouldn't be surprised that all of us have stories about how we coped or maybe didn't cope. But I also have only gotten involved with some of the other veterans. I know Dick James sitting up there, Slurp, my friend Slurp, who I had the pleasure of having lunch with 2 or 3 months ago. Hey, Dick, you know, if you haven't read his books, guys, get them. They're very interesting, especially he has got a whole book about Cai Cai. But yeah, it's like there was huge pause in our lives after the war, and now we're starting to pick up the pieces again, those of us that are still alive. So I share your feelings there, Cap.
Exact story as me. Couldn't almost exactly the same with the two of you. No I wanted nothing to do, proud of my service and proud of my country, but I wanted nothing to do with the memories of that time. And until I actually saw a psychiatrist through the VA, then I've been about 4 or 5 years ago, I've dealt with it. I've had cancer now too, and been taken care of at the VA. And so it's been almost verbatim the same thing that you guys have talked about from me. And I am sorry also. I've got one, I don't know if y'all remember or not, but we had trouble at the B detachment, B-43. And when I left country, that's where I was. I didn't even get back to Cai Cai. They come in a helicopter and got me at B-43 because I was 6 or 7 days past my D ropes. So if y'all remember that, I never got any of my stuff. I never got any whole baggage. I never got anything. I never got back to camp. They come and got me out of country. So all my pictures, everything that I had at Camp Cai Cai was left at Camp Cai Cai, and supposedly it was going to be shipped to me, but I never saw it again. So I have very little. I have nothing, and then I've suppressed my memory so much that I know that I do not remember things exactly correctly.
Yep.
Now, I did a little bit different than that. For about 2.5 years, I went back to college when I got back in the States, and I didn't want anything to do with anything either. But because in those years we had 6-year commitment, so you had 2.5 or 3 years in the inactive reserve. I ran into an SF medic who was in the 2-Corps Mike Force at school, and we used to go have beer together, got to be good friends. We're still good friends today. We hunt and fish together and everything today. And he said, you know, there's a 12th SF reserve group, because I'm in Portland. And he said there's a 12th. So we went out and joined that. And so I ended up with 32.5 years in the service. And that actually helped me tremendously. You know, so I was with people, kind of kindred spirits. Some of them, not everybody had been to Nam, and they came from different places, but that worked out really well for me.
Good.
I came back in '68 and really stayed away from everything. I was out of the country from 69 to 1979, just because I didn't feel comfortable. In 1988, there was a stand down for Vietnam veterans in Houston. And I had mentioned to the organizers of a computer club that I was in, that I would help them do the buddy search they promised to do. And they said, no, we don't need you. Don't bother with it. But I found myself in a hospitality room that I had organized with 60 other guys from Special Forces. And I didn't know there was a Special Forces Association, but at this point I joined it 20 years after I got out of the military. I participated in it. When we moved over to this house, the new house in Houston that we had a housewarming party for the chapter. And I had a friend of mine who was a psychiatrist at the VA hospital coming in just to use a friend. Afterwards, she said to me, the reason I don't see a lot of you guys here in my office is because you got a support group, which the chapter was. And all the people who said things here, it's the question of the support group and the personal resilience that's built in most of the SF people. So the stories aren't going to vary much, but you got the resilience other people don't have. And out there are support groups that are Special Forces support groups. It's not a support group to go to the VA and whining over.
Tell them you were sealed when you got.
Why?
Because they're telling their stories. You tell it.
You know, Mr. Sherman, I wish I had known about support groups and others a long time. Wish I'd reached out a lot sooner than what we have. But I'm thankful again. I know it's been said, but I'm very thankful for this opportunity that you've created for me. I hope I can continue to be in touch with some of y'all, because I'd like to get straightened out on some of the things. When I originally went to Cai Cai in December of '66, I got in a little trouble at the SFOB, and that was my punishment, was being sent to Camp Cai Cai. I did not earn my S. I was awarded my S after 6 months in combat at Cai Cai. We talked about Lieutenant Kemp a while ago. The only bad commander's evaluation report, CER, that I got was from Lieutenant Kemp, because he never did get over the fact that I didn't earn my S. He didn't like the fact that I was awarded my S.
What's an S?
I think there were some others that way also, but I was thankful for that. It was quite an experience for me as a young man, barely 19 years old. It was quite an experience, and had some pretty good friends. And now that I look back on it, actually a lot to be proud of, and a lot of people to be proud of.
Well, each of you got the email inviting you to this meeting, and there are probably 20 to 30 email addresses. Almost all of them are correct. I fixed up a few that were messed up, thanks to Ed telling me which some of them were wrong. Peter Crummy didn't get back to me, but there was just a misspelling of his name. So you got emails, or you can contact me about contacting other people, and I'll be happy to help you out on it. And you can always get in touch with each other using that box, all the emails in that box. Now, a couple of you have been talking about pictures. I hope that you'll follow the instructions in my email by you going to specialforcesphotos.com and signing in there and sending some of your photos up there into a Cai Cai album. If you need any help with that, you can call me at another time.
I've got a question for you. Did I send you my photos?
You should put them up on the website, because
Okay.
I set that website up so I don't have to work my ass off putting your photos up there. I go in there and check to make sure you're not a Russian bot, and then you're free to do what you want. You put your photos up there, you put the captions up there that you want, and somebody else can come by, and he's got my permission to be up there because I know who he is. And he can say, I'm the third guy from the left in that picture. That's a very useful website, which has not gotten as much attention as it should have. The Special Forces Books website, has got the team list. I've got to make one correction, because the link to the second map of one of the maps isn't quite right. But there are 150,000 maps that you saw me showing up here of Cai Cai AO. And the Green Beret magazines are up there, and my latest venture of the yellow books is up there somewhere. And it's all lots of good stuff on special forces and on Vietnam in particular. And then there are other websites in my email list that are good. Now, Bob was the last one to give us a good long story. Steve and Dick James were probably there in the next period of time. I don't know about David and Bob Johnson, but Steve and Dick should get in there and tell us your part of the story.
Yeah, Bob and I were on the same team at Cai Cai at the same time. He was a medic there, while I was the assistant intel sergeant, as well as demo sergeant there.
I think
And then
you were
it's
there a
got-
year ahead of me, Dick. You were there a year before me.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
no, I'm
But-
talking about Bob Johnson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
My apologies.
yeah, because Bob was a medic there when I was there.
And again, what years are you talking about?
1966, January of 1966.
You
And
were
so-
gone when I got there in December then.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Do you remember Murray Bates?
no,
Okay, he came after you. He was there when I got there.
okay. Yeah, when I was there, our CEO was Sincotti. He replaced, oh shoot. What was his name? The CEO that got killed?
Captain Donker.
Donker.
Yeah.
Yeah, he replaced Captain Donker. And the XO was Lieutenant Dot. The intel sergeant was, oh shoot,
Wasn't Gonzalez, was it?
no,
I remember Gonzalez. Gonzalez was there when I was there. That would have been October 67. As a matter of fact, I was going to jump in a while ago when you guys were saying Hernandez was on the Anctama operation. And I thought his name was Gonzalez.
Yeah,
I remember him.
Manny Gonzalez, Manny P. Gonzalez.
Manny Gonzalez. Yes, sir. That's the way I remember it too, Mr. Waldron.
Yeah. He and I spent a scary night with him, and I don't know why I was scared, but I was very nervous. We were sitting. You remember the bunker that we landed the helicopters on in the wet season? It was on the I guess it was north side of the camp, just a little ways from the team
Yeah,
house.
it was the 81 millimeter mortar bunker.
Right, and we
ammo
had a
bunker.
recoilless rifle there. Well, it was after the Anctama thing, and we received it was maybe somewhere around 10. Anyway, the intel was that they had tanks on the border, and we were thinking they're going to come at us with tanks. And I remember sitting there all night with Gonzalez with that recoilless rifle sitting up on top of the bunker, and I only fired one of those things when I was in AIT, in right after basic, so I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But he said, now if it heats up, he says, you just grab the rounds and stick them in the back and get out of the way. Yes, sir. But I was as nervous as a cat on a hot tin roof that night. Every little click, every little thump, I'd flinch. I think I remember that. I was very nervous that night. Nothing ever happened, but yeah.
Sergeant Gonzalez was a good guy.
He
and
was
a super good intel officer because he kept his mouth shut.
Yes.
When Vin come in with all those ears strung up on that wire, Gonzalez never said a word. He kept nobody ever knew that. You remember, does any of y'all remember that? When Westmoreland landed his helicopter on that same bunker you're talking about?
I do not.
Yeah, that was
Westmoreland,
probably
no, I
prior
don't.
to you getting there. That would have been in early 67.
Yeah.
Or middle 67.
Okay, I remember now. Hold on. The Gonzalez you guys are talking about was an intel sergeant.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he left, he derosed about, I think it was in December or about December of 67. Now, the heavy weapons man that was on the Anctama operation with me was Manny Lopez.
Yes.
Lopez was his name.
Lopez is dead.
Yeah, he was killed on a Mike Force operation
Exactly. Yeah.
several months after that. He got in the
Yeah.
DSC for it, and his kids have called me about him too.
I remember Lopez
Tommy?
very well. He was a good guy, good fellow.
Yeah,
Tommy, you're
Yeah.
talking about Manny Lopez, the weapons guy?
yeah, heavy,
Yes.
heavy weapons.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it was,
Later,
There
he
was
and
an
I
area-
were with the E1 mortar crew.
Larry, I think when you were there and I was there, was a different Lopez.
I remember there was a
It could
Lopez
be.
when I was
There
there.
was
And he had a,
there was two Lopez's that have been at Cai Cai.
really?
One
Yeah.
of them got killed.
One of them got
Yeah.
killed, but I think the one that was there when, I don't know if he was there when you were there, Bob, but when Larry and Elliot and I were there, that Lopez, I think, is still alive.
Well,
Really, because I
Lopez was
thought,
killed.
But he was different than the one that you're talking about was there earlier based on the records that Steve has.
okay,
the Lopez that I remember, I thought his first name was Manuel.
Right.
Very quiet man, nice guy, but we had a really ugly incident with him involving him. He was outside. It was dry season. He was outside in the field, past where we've docked the airboats and the sampans, where that little dock was.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they were shooting. They were target practicing. I don't know if he was zeroing a weapon or what, but was it daytime? Nothing going on. And I remember all of a sudden he comes in and he's all shook up. And it turns out he had fired his rifle up towards one of the villages along Cai Cai for whatever reason. And anyway, a Vietnamese kid was shot. And the civilians and the soldiers were all blaming Lopez for shooting him accidentally. And guns were drawn, tempers were hot. It was serious. They had Lopez with them, and they were threatening to kill him. And you remember Dai Ni, the CO?
Yeah.
CO? I'm sure Captain Gerhardt, I'm sure you remember him because he was the CO forever, I guess, as far as I know. He actually went out there, flak jacket on. He always wore a flak jacket as far as I remember. He went out there and he drew a little 38 snub-nosed pistol, and he had it in the air, and he had Lopez by one arm and that pistol in the air, and he was just chewing out Vietnamese pretty fast, and escorted him back in the gate where the airboats were, brought him back in, and turned him over to us. And I mean, everything was really tense. And so we took him in the team house, and we were in there for maybe an hour, and outside our loyal troops were kind of had us surrounded, weapons very visible. Nobody's pointing anything at us, but it was very tense. And I remember being told that I can't remember who the CO was then, if it was Sparks or Graham.
It would have been Paul Dill still, I think.
Boy, I don't remember. You know, it's awful. I just don't remember names anymore. But the story was they had radioed back to command, and they had a couple of gunship helicopters en route, and they were going to rotate over us just in case things went sideways. Things didn't go sideways. We got a helicopter in there. I think it was that same day, and Lopez was put on that helicopter and gone. My understanding was he was never charged with anything. It was an accident, but we heard a month or two later that he had been reassigned and had been killed in combat. The story we were told was that he had made repeated efforts to save, to crawl out under fire and save, drag in some guys that had been wounded, and that he made 2 or 3 trips, and the last trip he didn't come back from alive. And that, yes, we heard he got a DSC for that. It was very sad. The whole thing was sad. He was such a nice guy. Yeah, that's my recollection of Lopez, Sergeant Lopez.
Yeah, that's a different Lopez than was there when I was there.
Really?
In fact, I think he'd been there before. He had a brother in the 2 Corps Mike Force. And the reason that he came back to country was in hopes of letting his younger brother go home, but his younger brother didn't want to. And he had a 101st Combat Patch.
Wow. Yeah.
I spent my last operation with him. We were out down at Tram Chin, you know, we were doing a final airboat operation.
And his name was Pat?
Pardon?
His name was Pat Lopez?
No, I don't remember his first name.
Oh.
Steve, when was that you were in Train Shim doing an airboat operation?
Remember we did the first one when we got the airboats, and that was our first operation. It was the first time we came under fire. Remember the guy standing next to you got hit?
Yeah, he ended up dying.
Yeah, he ended up getting shot through both testicles.
That's
Oh.
right.
Yeah, both.
Yep.
It creased one thigh, went through both testicles, and came out the middle of the other thigh.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and so that was when we went down to Tram Chin. That was when we first got into our first heavy contact, if you remember, Larry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
And they
when
gave us
was
credit
that?
for-
You were gone, Larry, when we did the final operation at Tram Chin, I think.
Yeah, that's quite possible.
Yeah, I think Lynch was there then. And I
Yeah.
think he already left. Yeah. Because
That
that would
was
have
at
been
Cai
November.
Cai?
That would have been November.
Yeah, we had a section of airboats at Cai Cai, but they had a deal. We took the airboats clear down to Transham, which was quite a haul. And then we got into a heavy contact down there with a big bunker complex. I don't know how many airstrikes we put in there that day, but it was a bunch of them.
We used up 2 Phantoms. They went home empty.
Would that have been in 68?
That was 68.
Yeah, we brought the airboats there while I was there in 67.
I think
We went to Saigon and on the Mekong River and trained. I was one of the ones that went down there and trained on the airboats, and I think we brought a half a dozen back to Cai Cai. And then during the dry season, they would take them away.
Yeah, ours came from the B team, B-43.
Yeah.
And Bill Elliott and I went to airboat school there.
Did you?
At the beginning of the wet season, then they brought the boats out, and then we ran operations for the wet season.
I remember when we went to Saigon, the guy was teaching us how to repair them, everything. He'd burn his arms. He was a civilian. And they said, I don't remember who it was, but one of the guys down there, they said, you can't turn these airboats out. Well, the very first day we went out in training down there, he had one upside down in the water. So,
yeah, you did have to be careful.
Yeah, you can turn them over.
Yep.
We broke them in two on the patties. We would have to repair them pretty regular. We would have to dry dock them and fiberglass them, and that's what I did for years after that. I worked in fiberglass until I retired 20 years ago.
You're talking about patching up the bullet holes in the boat. Yeah.
Yeah, and the cracks where it would actually break when we were.
Yeah. We had one burn up. I was on one operation and one through a prop.
Oh,
yeah.
That would have been a thrill.
That had to be a nightmare.
Yeah, well, it takes 2 boats to tow one. So out of a 7-boat section, you got 3 boats just trying to get one back. And we happened to run into a big sampan convoy. I only had 4 boats. I think I was running that operation by myself. And these sampans are right there. You know, the airboats don't stop. They just idle around. And there was about 30, 40 sampans, no women, no old men, no kids.
Oops.
And we're all just looking at each other. And I'm thinking, I hope no fools start shooting here, because there's going to be a lot of dead people if they do. And because, I had I don't think I only had 9 Americans, or excuse me, 9 crew members on 4 boats. And so about that time, we got a call on the radio and said we needed to get back to the other boat. So, yeah.
Steve, let me interject just a little bit on that one, if I could.
Okay.
I was on that operation too, because I was driving the boat that threw the prop.
Yes, that's what I thought that probably you were. Because I remember we were going to hit a high ground early in the morning and nobody was in the village.
Yeah.
And then we took off just looking around.
Yeah. And I've thought about that operation many times, that I wish we'd have done that just a little bit differently, because I think we could have rounded up that whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
Intel later told us that was a platoon of Viet Cong.
Yes.
And they were all dressed in white pajamas, if you remember.
They were, interestingly enough. Yeah. And so, but, there I was with 4 boats. 9 guys.
I know.
And we'd have been shooting each other. The boats are all around them and everything. So, I mean, God, it would have been a mess.
That's one of those situations where one was scared and the other one was glad of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's where discretion is the better part of valor.
amen.
Did that airboat do a dance when you lost that prop?
I don't
No.
know. Yeah, I don't,
It,
Larry would know.
it went through the floor of the boat though. So, you know, it's not going to go anywhere. And it was taking on a little water. So not only did we have to tow it, but we had to keep bailing it out too.
Yeah.
So
I saw that propeller hitting the water. It must have been a ways away. I thought we were getting mortared for a minute, you know, because that wasn't uncommon, but it turned out to be
I
just
thought,
an
I
errant
thought
prop.
taking a round and it hit right in the hub of the propeller, but I never could tell that for sure, you know.
Yep.
But I can't think because I was just idling. The engine was just at idle when the thing threw the prop. So I don't know. It was a
Well,
deal.
We're lucky we didn't have more malfunctions than we did in all the places we were. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we have one in 67. We had an airboat that took around that and actually melted the heads on the engine.
Yeah.
It was trying to run, and they had aluminum heads on that engine, and one of the heads actually melted on that.
Those were 180 horsepower Lycoming aircraft engines.
Yeah, they were Lycoming engines.
Yeah. Yeah, my second tour, that's what I did. I commanded A404.
Yeah.
And we had 76 of them.
Wow.
So, you know, we had a full maintenance shop there in Calon. I had 7 Filipino tech reps.
Yeah.
And I mean, we had a complete fiberglass shop. We had an engine shop. We could literally rebuild or build the boat for that matter. But during the wet season, we'd scatter them all over the Delta.
Well, remember, we ended up with 2 sections.
Yeah.
You were surely exposed when you were driving one of those things.
Yeah.
You were exposed to enemy fire.
Hey, Tommy Daniels?
Yeah.
Do you remember the airboat operation you went on with me just before you left country?
Yeah, it was the only airboat operation I was ever on. And you invited me out to Calong. It was about 5-6 days before my deros.
Yeah.
You invited me out for a Calong party to enjoy a couple Chinese girls. And we got drunk, and then a message came in that some airboats were needed somewhere. And you asked me, do you want to go? And I said, fuck yeah, I'll go, you know. Well, the next morning I wasn't feeling that way, but I went. I went, and I was the A6 gunner on your boat.
Yeah.
And
the bad thing is we're down there in the Ken Van district, and it was pretty much a BC stronghold, and we ran aground, and those things were a little tough to get off back in the water.
There you go.
It was an exciting little operation that we were on.
Yeah, I fired 5 cases, 5 boxes of A6 ammo and recon by fire that day. And we never heard one shot incoming.
No, it's a good thing.
Liquor on your breath, huh?
What's that?
I said that Lieutenant Daniels, he have liquor on his breath.
He might have had some residual.
Residual.
For lunch, we went to Mida, I think it was, or some camp. And I drank a whole 6-pack of beer in order to get back on that boat afterwards.
Yeah.
Robert Johnson, did I mislabel you? I haven't heard a peep from you. Robert.
Yes.
I haven't heard a peep from you.
I'm listening.
What was your time frame?
Say again?
What was your time frame? When were you there?
I was a medic there from January to July '66.
Same time I was there.
Yeah. Good.
I was like, you were there. Roger was there too.
Who?
Roger Wallace? Roger Wallace.
All that name.
Yes, yes.
Not, no,
No,
not,
he wasn't there when we were there.
no,
No, I came after them.
Okay.
yeah.
And the medics, between when you guys were there, we had a medic by the name of O'Leary, and we had a medic by the name of Gilchrist.
Yeah, Gilchrist came out to Vinja while I was at Vinja
Did
the
he?
following year.
He was from California, wasn't he?
Yeah,
When we got back to Bragg, when I got back to Fort Bragg, Gilchrist had a brand new Super B with that hopped up engine, 4-speed. We toured Fayetteville and Spring Hill pretty. We got to be pretty close after we come back, and that Sergeant Murray one carried me out of that minefield. Him and his wife Maureen Bates, they run with us, and then Murray Bates was old 11th Airborne, I think, prior to Cai Cai. He was an older gentleman.
yeah. Yeah, I knew Gilchrist was from Cai Cai when he got to Vinja, and I knew he was from California because we decided he had a California flag, and we decided to put it up in the team house, and it ticked off everybody in the team.
I liked Gilchrist.
I did too. He was crazy.
He was a different kind of apple.
Yeah.
Robert,
You want to know something about all of you and all of us? I've been listening. You know, first of all, I think we're all smart as hell. Second of all, we're adrenaline junkies and crazy as hell.
I became a firefighter after I got back from Vietnam. You're right about the adrenaline junkie thing. Yeah, I spent 32 years in the fire service.
Well, when I got back, one of
Good
my
for you, bud.
credentials, you know, as an addictions counselor, you know, like somebody on here, it's been 33 years since I had a drink, and I didn't start drinking until I was in Vietnam, and I only drank really one time there. And some of you remember, you know, the drinking contest they had in the Cai Cai village. And I got called out when I was a doggy that the mayor or whatever, the high monkey muck in the town, wanted to go one-on-one with me drinking. And you remember how it was, you know, I don't know if you were there. There was a pool table down there, and were any of you there when we got the real genuine commode in the team house? You know, I mean, a real sit on it like we have our house at home, you know, and that was a story by itself. All the Vietnamese wanted to see it. But you had this drinking contest, and if you remember, the way it did was, you know, they had these, I call them the Kmart glasses. I don't know whether they were 20 ounces or whatever, the plastic glasses, you saw them all over Vietnam. And the beer, you know, was beer that had been trucked across the ocean in the hulls of boats, sat on the docks of Saigon, and had been dropped to us in the mud at Cai Cai. You know, and that was the beer that you drank at all these contests. And if you remember the cans, when you popped the lid, nothing happened. There was no fizz. It was done wherever that it disappeared by magic. Well, the drinking contest you went down there, and you know, the little skinny guy, because they were all skinny. I was skinny when I left. I weighed 147 when I left. The skinny guy across from you, and you know, go through an interpreter. And the rules when I was there were the same. That, you know, the first thing you did was you ate a piece of the pig, you know, that stuff hanging in village street that all the flies have been on and everything. You know, fat back, we'd call it back in the States. You ate that between 2 cucumbers, okay? And then you chug-a-lugged this 20 ounces of beer, and the person who passed out first or threw up first lost. Okay? I won that contest. I won that contest. And you know, and I walked back to the team house, and I said to myself, you know, we had a full bar there. If you remember the bar and the full bar there, you know, Maggie drank there. Clayton Abrams came out right after that November thing when I was there. He came out and he came to the team house, and we had a discussion about that. And you know, he says, "Can I have something to drink?" or however asked him. And I says, "Well, what do you want?" And he says, "I want the same thing Maggie drinks." Guy says, "That's 2 ounces of vodka and a dirty glass." And he sat there and drank it. We had a conversation. But I won that contest, and I should have known then. I didn't know. I should have known I was an alcoholic then. And I came back, and I got off the plane in San Francisco, and I walked in a bar, and I was 27 years old. And I got off the plane, got out of all my uniform because what they were doing with us. We got back, and I got in civilian clothes and walked into a bar, and you know, here I was, 27 years old, and they carded me. I think you had to be 19 to drink back then. They carded me, you know, but I started drinking, and I telling war stories, and I was fascinating. And when the bar shut, they locked me in the bar with 3 other girls who thought I was fascinating, and they poured me on the plane the next day. And I got back somehow to Greensboro, and I walked off the plane, you know, and my wife holding my child walked right past me. She didn't recognize me because she wasn't looking for fascinating. She was looking for her husband.
No.
I think
Well,
a lot
this
of us drank a lot of liquor when we came back.
No, tell them what you did.
I don't, Captain Gerhardt and Roger, you might remember early when I hadn't been there very long, maybe a couple months, month and a half. I was pretty green, pretty naive, and we had some kind of minor battle, and we won, and so they had a victory party there over, I believe it was in the LLDB side of the team house. We had this victory party, big long table, lots of food and the beer. And so, yeah, they started playing the chug-a-lung game, right? And I think they figured me really quick for being the victim, because I'm playing along. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll drink with you guys and eat with you guys. And I was having a great time. I liked the food, I really did. Anyway, to make a long story short, they got this, and when you said the Kmart glass, that's exactly what I remember, is that big tall glass, full to the brim with beer, Bombay Bar or Tiger beer, one or the other. And okay, so they're getting me to chug a lug, and it's, you know, boxy, go. They're all applauding, and I'm drinking, and I've had a full belly and everything. I'm drinking, and I got the glass to the very bottom, and blah, all over the table. It just sprayed out like an explosion. And of course, everybody thought that was the funniest thing they'd seen in a long time, except me. I was kind of embarrassed. But
I do remember a little of that, Bob.
You remember that?
I'll never could handle the Bombay Bar and the Nook Bomb sauce myself.
I know. That was my first experience with what they call in medicine projectile vomiting. Because man, I just sprayed across the table.
Do any of you guys remember a stinking cigar smelling sergeant by the name of Horn?
Yes, Sergeant Horn. He was the team sergeant when I got there.
Wonder whatever happened to him.
I don't know.
I'm curious about some of the guys. You remember his cigars?
Yes. Yeah. I like them.
You could smell them from one end of the team house to the other. I could smell them when I was taking a shower.
Yeah, I remember Sergeant Horn. He's a good guy.
You can see what happened to just about everybody on that list that I have on the website. Horn is deceased. If you need,
Is he?
if you need more.
What about Lieutenant Dover, Sherman?
Dover?
Yes.
Larry Dover.
I got a little bit of a funny story about him if anybody want to hear it.
We always want to hear all the funny stories.
Go for it.
He, I guess y'all still had the airstrip in '68, but we had an airstrip when I got there. And during the dry season, we had an old Jeep, an ambulance Jeep, there at the compound, and we would put 20-foot strips of PSP together and drag the airstrip to smooth it off, you know. Well, during the wet season, we'd get shelled. Well, Lieutenant Dover was on the Jeep, M151A, I think it was, I can't remember. But he was grading our airstrip after at the start of the dry season, and he ran over a non-exploded shell of some kind with that PCP, and it blowed all 4 tires out on that Jeep.
Oh my goodness.
He got no shrapnel. It blowed holes in the bottom of the Jeep, but he got no shrapnel. He didn't get anything. He was going fast enough, I guess it didn't get him.
That must be why we had 2 3/4-ton trucks when I got there, because you guys blew up the Jeep.
Well, we only had 1 Jeep when I was there. And it was ambulance Jeep, had the extended back on it, you know, for the stretcher. But Lieutenant Dover, he left sometime early in '67 because he wasn't there but a month or a month and a half after I got there.
Yeah, every year we had to drag the airstrip, you know, after the wet season, because all the stuff had grown up out there.
Yeah, and there was unexploded shells after. We got shelled all during the wet season. That's when they shelled us from Cambodia. Another little story about Cambodia, I don't remember exactly when it was, but y'all were talking about Cambodia and Jackie Kennedy there a while ago, but at some point during the 14 months I was at Cai Cai, I can't remember exactly when, but Jane Fonda showed up at Phnom Penh, and we took some pretty bad stuff during her 3 or 4 day visit to Phnom Penh, spreading her crap. Anybody remember her being over there?
Remember this newspaper stories? I got no use for that one.
Yeah.
That's about it. Newspaper story.
Yeah. She was there at Phnom Penh at some point in time, probably early in '67 while I was there. We took some pretty heavy stuff about that time from that Cambodian outpost that you guys leveled. Gosh, I wish I could have seen that.
You guys got to do some things to that outpost and across that I wanted to do when I was there. And we didn't have permission to do it, you know, or didn't think we should do it or whatever. But hearing those stories just kind of makes me happy.
Yeah.
Well, I can remember a time at Cai Cai there when we got sick and tired of the outpost firing at us and not being able to retaliate. So we got a group together with a recoilless rifle, and at night we went across the border and we actually fired at that outpost with the recoilless rifle as well as with our 4-deuce mortar in camp. But we refused to tell anybody about that operation because it was supposedly illegal to do so.
Yeah,
but we were proud of ourselves.
after we blew it up, we had a team from the International Control Commission and we all had to testify under oath what we'd done and everything. And we had declared a tactical emergency. We were getting hit so hard. And we never heard any more about it after we testified and everything, but we definitely had these guys were from the Netherlands or someplace that were in talking to us about it. So it was somewhat of a big deal.
Yeah.
Sir, we had a spotter aircraft that actually it would have been in January of '67 that also fired a rocket at that one of his rockets, L-19 Bird Dog. And we called him a Red Baron. He had a scarf flying out on the outside of his when he was spotting for us, you know. And he actually he put it in that grass field. Y'all said it looked like mowed like grass. He actually he fired a warning shot at him. We had a lot of crap about that too. Wasn't international, but we had some visitors.
Yeah.
The State Department histories of the Vietnam War are just full of incidents like this along the Cambodian border. It really was a big thing for the Department of State. Tommy, had some post-war experiences with Cambodia, but the sensitivity of that situation was very high, way past any reasonable time. Any mention of the word Cambodia in operational reports for Vietnam was classified, and because the guys with the striped pants just thought they could always get back and in favor with Sihanouk, and they were dreamers, So, but even later, the communists had problems because the Khmer Rouge had the same idea as the KKK. They wanted Lower Cambodia given back to the Cambodians. They just couldn't quite get over the fact that there were 10 times more Vietnamese than there were Cambodians. And I think the ratio increased considerably after Khmer Rouge killed off such a big portion of their population. But they had hope, and they attacked and provoked the North Vietnamese to responding to that. And the North Vietnamese just took advantage of it. And, if there was any imperialist in this war, it was North Vietnam. They took over Laos, they ran Cambodia, and they came to the south and they ran the south. They didn't merge with it, they ran it. That's my high horse.
Well, they had, even when I was there in '66, and all you guys I know, there was still a lot of religious conflicts with the Wahas and the Montagnards and the South Vietnamese. There was, I guess it's probably still going on today, isn't it?
The Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese have pretty well suppressed everything they could suppress. The Montagnards are living under very difficult conditions. The Cambodians have probably given up any hopes of reunification with Cambodia if they haven't left already, and they wouldn't, because they would have got killed in the killing fields. And the various religious sects are silent. If you're not part of the established church or churches in Vietnam, you don't open your mouth.
Well, the religious thing and all that, I guess, because what I did after I got out of Vietnam. But I remember when I was there, the chaplain coming to the site and to give communion to any of us, our guys, or whatever, and come visit and so on. But did he also, first time I saw this, he went down to the river. You know, the dock went down the river. Cai Cai went down to the river, and he had this. I described this when I got to divinity school. He had, maybe you all remember it. He had this kit. It was like press a button and you got instant all. A lot of mixed things because the French had been there and the French soldiers had intermixed and so on, and then they had left, you know, across the years, and you had a mixed bag of people coming, you know, because to do the Catholic thing with him. He was Catholic. Do the Catholic thing because with their kids to be baptized, blessed, or whatever, we figured it out, you know, and they would be, Lord knows, Buddhist, whatever. It was just really strange. And then another thing about another issue before I get out, you know, I remember so much when Jackie Kennedy was there, we got clobbered. Every time somebody big was there, of course we got clobbered. And the thing is, when you can't get near the border, Spooky could back off with the Gatling guns and make life a little bit miserable for you. And so, you know, Spooky fly around over there, and if people try to get at you during the night, you know, kind of help, and you see Spooky all the time, and the flares from the tracer rounds. But then when we're told don't get near the border, they back Spooky off. During that November, Jackie was there. And when we finally got okay, when we were going to go down.
Uh-oh. Wonder why it's breaking up.
Bill, you just froze.
You know, in the clear, you know, and saying, we're done, we're out of here. We're blowing the berm and leaving, you know, and that's when Chicken Hawk 5 or whatever his call sign came up, because Westmoreland was back in the United States, and it was Clayton Abrams, you know, and he basically said, I don't remember this, guys, if you were there, he says, can you hold out for 30 more minutes? And I said, yep, I will sure try. And man, here comes, well, the national incident about this, you're bringing jets in. Here they come, ready or not, to support us. And they, you know, we're the bad guys. And I said, okay, you know, we lit up the fire arrow that was in the middle of the camp with all the cans and the sand. You pour gas in there, you aim it. I says, you know, that plus 2 clicks and you got them. Well, you can come in there and you can bomb, you can scrape, whatever. It takes 30 miles to turn you around. You are really, really in there. So you have created an incident beyond all incidences. And all that stuff got scrubbed. You know,
Kansas City.
A lot of paperwork with stuff like that. We just got through it and the fight went on. And so now putting history back together, I don't know if you really can, except the way we're doing it from the ground up.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, guys.
Yes, speak.
Yeah, I was just showing you guys the arch. We're in St. Louis in a hotel, and we're getting ready to go to the Cardinal game. So I'm going to sign off, go get some supper before we go to the game. So go Cardinals.
Go Cardinals.
Have a good time.
I hope we can talk again.
Yeah.
In Kansas City on the other side of the river.
He said
Yeah,
he
I
was
think
just
so.
showing St. Louis.
St. Louis.
It looks like we lost Steve Lucas. I was just going to tell a story about him, ask him a question. But I will ask you a question, Bill. Do you remember water skiing in the Cai Cai River?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a picture of Steve and you are dripping wet. You had just walked in from the team house, and I snapped your photograph. You were dripping wet, and I got pictures of Steve driving or it was either Steve or a guy named Phillips. Philip Phillips was the radio operator, I believe. And we actually skied in front of the main gate there at Cai Cai one time. I think we only did it once, and then we decided probably not a good idea to do it again. But that was a crazy day. Lieutenant Sparks was. I got a picture of Sparks. He got sent to another team and again was killed somehow in combat. He was a interesting fellow.
Bob, we skied on the Cai Cai River more than once because I put my 45 and wrapped it in plastic and skied up and down the river with
I didn't know that. I remember we found
a
the water
45 sidearm on. Yeah. But skiing behind those assault boats we have with the 40 horse Johnsons on them.
Yep. Behind the assault boat.
Yep.
You know, the truth about it is we could have died, a lot of us, from what we did for fun between the fights. Between the war, what we did for fun, you know, is you tell people that is a good God.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, Mr. Gerhardt, you were pleased with some of the stuff we tried to do for fun.
Yeah, I came back. I had lots of film. I had one of those, when I went there, I had a fancy camera, half frame that you wound up, and it took pictures as fast as I could click it. And I had an unbelievable amount of film, but I was privy to the fact that in Saigon, what the reporters were doing back in the States and whatever, they were paying for bribe and whatever for any of us who sent or kept these rolls of film that we sent commercially. So when I left to come back to the States, you know, we didn't leave in Class A. We left in field gear, field pants.
Breaking up.
You know, and my field pants were, and I put the undeveloped film in a safety deposit box and did not develop it for years. You know, did not develop it for years. And when I finally decided I needed to do something with it, I didn't want to develop it. I just let it all go. You know, it was one of the things, maybe I have a daughter who's a historian who goes right.
Frozen again.
Really,
It's freezing.
Sometimes he freezes up here.
Yeah, we're losing Bill there.
Well, anyway, guys, I've got to run, but it's been great. And Bob, I will get that picture to you. And,
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's exchange some emails.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
According to Steve, the emails are all on the list, so I'll get yours from him. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Anyway, guys, it's been great. So I'll look forward to doing it again sometime.
Good to
Take
see you
care.
again, brother.
Enjoyed it.
Take
Okay.
care.
Enjoyed
Bye.
it. Yeah. Bob, you and I, I've had a lot of things going on here. But I'm gonna get with you, and you said you had some more pictures. I'd like to, I'd like to be involved in that too. I'm sorry, I don't have, I didn't get anything. Like I said, when I left, the way I left, I didn't get anything, never did get anything. So,
Only a few, I think.
anything I could get, I would be, I'd be glad to get at this time.
Okay. Yeah, I got a bunch of them are on slides. And so I got to either take them to a photography place and have them convert it. Although Steve told me there's a deal with the government that if I send them the slides, they'll put
Texas
them
Tech.
on a CD-ROM and put them in some kind of a library scenario.
Texas Tech that has a Vietnam Center. They will take
Yeah.
your slides if you donate the slides. And I recommend that you send in a written set of captions for the slides because nobody else knows what they are.
Right.
And they will return your slides on a CD-ROM and no charge. But they
Right.
keep the slides. They keep the originals.
Now, is the CD-ROM then turned into a photograph,
No,
or
the
is it just
CD-ROM
another slide?
is just like a file. And you want it on a thumb drive, they'll give it to you on a thumb drive too. It's just like a collection of files. Each one of your pictures is a file. Nobody sings. I
Okay,
promise.
but a slide has to be put through a projector for people to really enjoy it. Whereas
Right.
I want to turn them into
You're going to get
photograph.
a print. You're
A
going to
print.
get
There
a
we
print.
go. Yeah, I'll check it out, Bill. Steve.
That's the way to go. They have very high-tech machines that can handle it, and they can handle large quantities of slides.
Yeah, I
So
think
they
I got
do a
about.
good job.
I think I probably got about 300 slides. About 150 of them are medical slides of us doing butchery to poor victims. You know, digging shrapnel out of people and some nasty
That's
burns.
also
and
that's
all
very
that kind of
important
stuff.
stuff.
Doing tattoo removal.
No. That never happened. That never happened.
That never happened. No.
That was an infection that had to be treated. Now, I've thought about that over the years, and I thought to myself, why did I let him talk me into doing that? That wasn't right. I shouldn't have done that, but I did.
Well, it wasn't much of a secret because Gan walked around the camp with this huge bandage on his left arm for about a week or two.
Well,
after.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Oh well.
I was afraid to say anything about the infection even on here.
Well, Steve's recording it, so it's here for posterity now. If the medical police come to get me, I'll plead the fifth.
You guys have been really tame about all your recollections. I had a friend here in Houston who had a camp up in I-Corps. He was the CEO. I told him we're having a meeting, and he declined to come to the meeting. However, I found out about the helicopter full of whores that he brought into the camp for Christmas. And a few other things his team talked about, which I can now hold over his head.
I know Captain Gerhardt, remember Maggie, Martha Ray, Maggie, visiting our team. And I got photos of Bill drinking with Maggie. I got the proof for sure. And unfortunately, I also have a photo of Maggie leaving with an IV bottle clutched under her arm. That night, I don't know if you remember, Bill, but that night we ran out of vodka. And so yours truly, and I don't know, I think the other medic was probably a co-conspirator. We went out to the dispensary and took a bottle of sterile water, dumped half of it out of the bottle, and filled the rest of the bottle with 100% medical alcohol and put a label on it for her label. And I know we drank, I think we made 2 bottles. One bottle we went back in the team house and we drank that the rest of the night with orange juice. Seemed like that's what everybody wanted. And we were short, I think, all kinds of liquor that night. Then we gave her a gift. We put a label on it, said Old Smear Off. And we gave it to her as a gift. And she took it back on the helicopter the next day. I got pictures of her and Horn, Sergeant Horn, and Lieutenant Kemp. I think Gonzalez is in the photograph maybe, of Maggie, and Sandra Lee. She was a Broadway actress. She didn't spend the night with us. Maggie spent the night. And I remember she put a St. Christopher medal on the bulletin board there by the door. And I think it was a couple days later, we got mortared pretty bad. I think, Bill, you mentioned that after we had a celebrity or a bigwig, we always got hit a couple days later. Sure enough, we got mortared. And as I recall, the St. Christopher medal did its job for the team anyway. I don't know. One night we got mortared and we had 6 killed and about 30 wounded, all Vietnamese. And that was a pretty interesting night. Anyway.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't remember the source of the alcohol being like that. I think, you know, I don't remember that was the source. I think when I asked you or something, you told me you guys had built a still, which I would have believed, you know, I don't know. But I have a picture, I have a photo of myself kissing her goodbye, my arm around her, kissing her goodbye. And I have the IV bottle in my hand to hand to her. And behind me is Lieutenant Kemp. And I don't know, you know, so, oh yeah, I do vividly remember that. We got hit pretty quick later.
Yeah.
And, you know, we got hit a lot that November, December.
Yeah, we got mortared a lot. Yeah.
I mean, that November, December, January at Cai Cai, those 90 days, when I was in the B team meeting prior to this, those 90 days, November, December, January were a wow. But also January was, of course, the first month of TET, first phase, and went through March. But those 5 months, it was here we come, ready or not. And I was back, of course, out. I was home in January. But when I was processing out, when I was trying to get out of country, didn't know I was going to get out, you know, and I was all ready to go. And Da Nang, whatever. And I remember the operations sergeant came in and said to me, "Your camp is under attack right now." And I says, crap, you know. I left and got on the plane to leave, and you guys were taking it again. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we got mortared quite a few times there, as I recall. But you know what was so? I had nothing to compare it with in terms of a military career. That was my only year that I was in a combat situation. So I came basically right out of training. I'd been in training for about a year and a half to finish up the medical training and off to Vietnam. And I actually thought it was a pretty quiet scenario for us. To me, it was like, yeah, okay, we got mortared a few times, but I guess I was comparing it to what was going on up in I Corps, 2 Corps, and I came away. People had asked me over the years, and I'd say, yeah, we lost some guys, and there's sad times, but by and large, it wasn't, you know, it's kind of like being in the Wild West in the cavalry. We'd hang out in the fort, and at night we'd drink, and then in the daytime we'd go out and see if we could find the Indians, and we only found them when they wanted to be found. And so that was my perception. So it's interesting to hear you say your perception was that was a pretty busy time. So, you know,
yeah,
I
feel the same way about my time at Cai Cai, that it was a busy time. And like you mentioned, it seemed like the only time we found the VC was when they wanted to be found.
Yep.
When they hit us rather than us hitting them.
Yep.
And I always wondered if maybe it was our interpreter, San, who had turned on us.
Yeah.
But I guess that isn't true now.
Probably more than one.
Yeah.
Well, we had VC in the camp. I mean, we know we did. We absolutely had VC in the camp. And then defensively, when you look at that camp and try to explain it, when you got the Mekong River kind of on your left locking you in, and you're facing the border, you know, you're in an automatic defensive position.
Oh yeah.
And then
it really,
you're in an automatic, you know, there's not too many places you can go. And to fly in there, really, and we had Mike Force behind us, you know, we had some big, you know, 155s behind us. But to fly in there, you really only came in one way.
Yep.
You went out one way. You didn't do anything else. And during my time there, you know, I told people they couldn't land. you know, some big wigs out of Saigon, military, whatever. I says, no, it is not safe to land now. You can't get in, you know, and I did that. And I don't know if who was there, but the day after, you know, when we thought we'd blow the berm and everything else, Jackie Kennedy there, we really got, here they come, ready or not, pretty hard. And General Abrams bailed us out. You know, the next day he came. He came with the gunships and whatever. And they just stayed up there, just circling while he was on the ground. And he came in and he landed on that floating helipad we had, which was what, you know, gas drums for the airboats. The gas had been used for the airboats, and we had actually taken them and strapped them together and built a floating helicopter pad. And I remember, you know, going out to him. I didn't know who the dickens it was, you know, and I knew it was about what had happened the day before. And so going out, and I was, you know, how he used to be, you know, during the, you see pictures of us digging stuff and everything. It was hot. So I'm naked to the belt, you know, and I have my patrol hat on, and we didn't wear insignia because I mean, we didn't want to be the guy to be shot. And I didn't like to stand next to radio operators, because everybody knows if you want to find the CO, he's next to the radio operator. That's the dumbest place for anybody to stand. I learned that early on. So I'm going out there, and I look the part because I am the part. You know,
Yeah.
I'm down to I have a 1,000-yard stare. I'm down, I got pictures of myself. I'm down to muscle and grit.
Yep.
You know, I always thought Rambo was a joke. He'd sink a sandpan. I mean, they couldn't, you know, the little guys couldn't carry you back if you were too big. So I go out there and I have to go out and wade in the water to get to the floating pad. And I'm looking up there, and there he is, Clayton Abrams, with the pearl handle, you know, revolve everything. And he is starched and creased, and everybody up there, there isn't a thing below a full bird colonel. And he looks at me, and I realize who it is, and I salute him. He turns to everybody in the chopper and he says, "You guys stay here." He jumps out. His pearl handle revolver goes under the water. He goes into the team house with me. We get into the team house, you know, just he and I. He asked for he said, you know, want a drink? He says, yeah, I'll have what Maggie had. And I gave him, and we sat at the table right there in the team house and had our discussion about how that was going to be handled. And he got me out of the Army. I didn't think they were going to let me out of the Army when I get back to the States. And Abrams let me out. They weren't going to let me out. It was about the time when they were freezing everybody. And boy, it didn't matter what your deal was, you know, but how you came in, how many years you said you give, you know, it didn't matter. They were just going to, you weren't, you know, and I didn't know I'd get out. And I got him. He was back for a debriefing mission. I knew exactly where he was because I'd worked for the Air Force in the Pentagon. I knew exactly where he'd be, and I got to him, and he recognized me. And he said, "Gerhard, what the hell do you want?" And I says, "They won't let me out." And he picked up the phone, and I was out of the Army the next day.
Wow.
Discharge and a fistful of $100 bills, not knowing what the hell had happened.
Well, was he just visiting Vietnam at that time, or was he actually assigned to MACV?
No, he was a deputy commander. When he
Under
rescued us, Westmoreland was back for a debriefing. Thank God for small favors. Westmoreland was back in the States. Clayton Abrams was running the show. when Jackie Kennedy was in Cambodia.
Yeah, okay, well, in 69, when I was there on the Mike Force, Abrams really gave everybody in SF a hard time. I mean, that's when Colonel Rowe was arrested, you know, and some of those guys for the, you know, shooting the agent and so forth. But in 69, he had at all our B teams, and word came down before before he got command. Word came down from 5th Special Forces Group. Get all your books in order, get your chow books in order, your intel funds and all that. And what happened is what we got was a replacement. S1 was actually CID. And he was caught snooping around here and there, and somehow he ended up getting shot and was down at the hospital at Bentui Air Base, 29th Evac. But in 69, it was really a shitty place to be, you know, trying to fight the war and dealing with Abrams as shit.
This is a Green Beret magazine here, cover. Date is November of 69. And this is when I asked people to send me their magazines. If you can't really see it, but over here where my finger is on his rolled up sleeve, the person who sent me this magazine had written in the word leg on that sleeve. When I chose which volume, which copy of this issue to print, I printed this. So it's inside the Green Beret magazines. Very few people will notice it, but there was not a lot of love lost between Abrams and SF in 1969.
Yeah,
Didn't he have some issue? Didn't he have some issue with Special Forces that somehow evolved around Sergeant Major Woolridge at the time?
Well, Woolridge was not Special Forces.
I know, but he was.
Dunaway was Special Forces. Abrams had an issue with what happened with the Sergeant Majors, and that bothered him. But that was not related to Special Forces. In fact, Bob Sorley, who was one of the preeminent Vietnam military historians, who wrote how much he felt that Abrams was a good guy and Westboro was a bad guy. We argue about that. You can't, but I don't argue too much with Bob. But he pointed out that after all of the time that Abrams didn't have a sergeant major, when he finally broke down and said, okay, I'm going to hire a sergeant major, he hired Ron Bowser. And Ron Bowser is probably the straightest sergeant major the Army ever produced. And he was Rowe's sergeant major in Vietnam. So
I remembered after I got back to the 3rd, our sergeant major there was Sergeant Major Watkins, and he and Woolridge and Abrams, there was something going on there that I, at my lowly position, but I was in O&I there, and so I spent a lot of time with Sergeant Major Watkins, but I never did know what the whole deal was. But I know that would have been in early '68 because I got out. That would have been in early,
Woolridge was involved in using official airplanes, including Abrams airplane, to send things back to the United States that shouldn't have been sent back.
Yeah.
And he was also involved in the whole club and mess scandal that erupted at that time. I've got like an 8-volume set of congressional hearings on that.
Is that right?
It got pretty nasty, but the Colonel Rowe incident was in '69, and that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
Rowe had just arrived in Vietnam from the command of the 1st Group in Okinawa. The head of B-57 had just arrived, an NCO by the name of Alvin Smith, who had been operating in 4 Corps. I don't remember which camp he was operating out of. Came across a grainy picture that SOG people had picked up in Laos. And he said, that guy is my interpreter from this camp in 4 Corps. He's a double agent. Well, the detachment B-57 was an intelligence operation. So they went and got the guy and they interrogated. Then they gave him sodium pentothal. Then they beat him up a few times. And by the time they'd gone through that, it didn't matter whether he was a double agent or not. He was not going to be very friendly to the Americans. So they asked the CIA to dump him in Taiwan for a couple of years because what B-57 was doing was running unilateral operations into Cambodia. The Vietnamese had nothing to do with it. And they didn't want that information going back. And they really didn't want this guy getting out. The agency wasn't of any help whatsoever in trying to resolve it. So Rowe is sitting there at the table, listening to B-57. He tells his sergeant major and his XO to get out of the room because he doesn't want them to have anything to do with it. And while he wouldn't have liked any of his A-team commanders doing what he did, he didn't want to pass a problem up to Abrams that was non-resolvable. His mistake, as far as I'm concerned, was something that all of us who were junior officers learned in OCS. Got a problem, talk to your senior NCO. Whatever his answer is, that's the right answer. And now Rowe put his sergeant major out of the room. Whatever answer Bowser would have given him, that would have been the right answer. What he did was he said, okay, the CIA says let's
terminate with extreme prejudice.
Extreme prejudice, yeah. And that's what they did. And there's a funny story published about 4 intelligence officers wearing berets in a boat in near Trang Harbor with a body wrapped in chains on the bottom of the boat. And these 4 SF captains, or supposedly SF captains, are trying to figure out how to put a bullet in this guy without putting a hole in the boat. To me, that was a typical picture. So there's more that story, you know. But the other part was that there's a guy who I disliked because he was my boss in 1968 for the last 3 months I was there. And I didn't like him. He didn't like me. He wrote me bad efficiency reports. I quit the Army basically. I was planning on extending, but I had to put up with him, so screw this. And I came back to Vietnam in '69, and I'm walking around the compound at Camp Goodman, and he looks out the window and sees me, and he's really pissed. He tells my OCS classmate, who is the S5 there, make sure that guy doesn't come in here ever again. And then I went out and got a job working for the PX system at a grade higher than he was. So I felt, you know, living well is best revenge. But apart from that, I always watched him in what I found of the history. And Ambassador Bunker, who I had met briefly and admired greatly, had been briefed by Ted Shackley about the whole incident. And Shackley told Bunker that he was now going to MacV to brief Abrams about the CIA position. Bunker, being the gentleman that he was, calls up Camp Goodman tells this guy to come to Camp Goodman and tells him explicitly everything that Shackley had told him. The expectation, I presume, was that this guy would call up Colonel Rowe and explain to him that his trip to Saigon to see Abrams was walking into an ambush. As far as I can tell, Rowe never, this guy, Weil, never lifted a finger. Didn't call up Rowe at all. Rowe came in, lied to to J1 at MacV, and Abrams just came down on him, busted everybody. It was unnecessary, it was stupid, and it wasn't going to happen because the CIA wasn't going to testify. And nobody could prove anything. But it shouldn't have happened in the first place, because that unit, B-57, had 3 incidents of double agents, suspected double agents, that were punctuation marks in its history. 1965, it was a special forces operation running out of Saigon, out of Camp Goodman. They had a double agent. They killed him. They got in trouble. The operation was taken over by the 25th MI detachment, or whatever, MI group, whatever it was. And they went on for about a couple of years, and they got a double agent assassinated in a taxi cab in Tay In City by an SF captain. 2 years later, 1969, the sergeant major of B-57, who was an old-time SF person, from my point of view as a sergeant major, his job was to send cookies to that guy who was in Long Bin jail, because he was a member of the team at one point. Had he been doing so, he would have known that assassinating double agents gets you into jail. But he wasn't sending cookies. There was no unit history that told him that he had a guy in jail. So that never got passed on, and Rowe got the blame for a messy situation that shouldn't have happened in the first place.
Well, all those B-57 guys, as I understood it and learned in a couple cases specifically, they weren't special forces. They were all MI.
Yeah. Wearing berets because they were MI and they were authorized to put on whatever uniform or rank they wanted, all operating under field names to cover their own identity. Although I know everybody and I know what their field names were. So much for secrecy. But they were MI people. And there were a couple of SF people.
Was everybody at 57, were they MI?
Well, not every single person. Wade Ishimoto was there, and he's old hand, SF old hand guy. Budge Williams was there. He later was, I guess, deputy commander of Tish, which was what Special Forces became when they went home, or before they went home, or after they went home, but in Vietnam. So there are a couple of SF people there. Certainly the Sergeant Major was SF. So there were SF people, but for the most part, it was an MI operation.
The guy that ran the B-57 operation in 4 Corps was Major Richfield.
Mm-hmm.
And he was assigned to C4 as the S2. But he was a good guy. He was a good guy. He helped me a couple times when I got in trouble, or crossed paths with the B-57 operation and didn't know it. And then they got their knickers in a twist, and Richfield helped me out there. But he wore ASA brass. No, he wore AI brass, but he was a good man.
Who out of 57 was coordinating all of our air, help the transport of supplies and stuff? Who was doing that out of 57?
Nobody was doing that out of B-57.
Nobody?
B-55.
Where he grew up.
B-55, up until the time you were there, Roger, was the detachment in Saigon. Okay,
Benoit.
no, Saigon, the Camp Goodman.
Yeah.
They were the local purchase agency out of Saigon. They sent things to each of the camps. The number went in 1968. It went to the Mike Force. The Mike Force became B-55, and B-57 became the CLD.
Yeah, Project Gamma was the name for B-57, but that was, you'd never mention that in country during that time. Well, gentlemen, I got to go. It's been nice. Great seeing y'all again. Those that I worked with and those that I didn't. So I guess I'll be around the next time when you gonna get to the Mike Force. You say it's gonna be a month or so?
It's going to be more than a month because I just was notified I've got 37 more people to look up between now and the 25th of the month, and then my subscription ends. So I won't finish B-42 before the end of the month.
Okay, well, if you come across somebody you can't get in contact with, let me know, because I've been to a couple of the Mike Force reunions out in Texas.
The Mike Force stuff, I should have a pretty good handle on that because I've done that several times over, but I'll pass it by you.
Yeah.
Robert,
all right. Take care, gentlemen.
Robert,
I enjoyed it.
Got you wrong. Are you Robert Johnson or Robert Smith?
Robert Johnson.
I don't know. I don't have your email address.
You sure?
Yes, you do.
Are you in Idaho? Weedy, Idaho.
We are.
Okay, that is you.
Yes.
Yep.
Have you got my email? Send me your address and your email, physical address and your email address and phone number.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh.
For some reason, obviously you got the word to come here, but I don't see where I sent it to you.
Dick James sent forwarded the invitations.
Good. But so send it to me. I called the number there. I called.
Will you do this again for specifically Cai Cai, Sherman?
Probably not.
Okay.
I called you at 707-422-3117.
That's an old number.
What should it be?
Try me at 208.
208.
435.
435.
4521.
4521. Okay, good. Yeah, you were on my list of people I didn't find. So send me an email with the email and physical address.
I'll do that.
Okay.
I got a quick question for you guys before we call this thing out. Towards the end of my career, we were on an operation and a staff grade officer landed. We'd been out there all night and things were pretty tense. In the morning, early light, we had a couple of airstrikes come in and we ended up being on the right side of that little fight. But this field grade officer landed and I've never caught his name. And anyway, his call sign was Mal Hombre. Does anybody remember? I think he was field grade officer, Mal Hombre. I don't remember if he was SF. Pardon me?
Did he come from the B team or the C team?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I don't remember, Bob.
Yeah,
Remember that call sign at all?
yeah, okay.
No.
There were, yeah, there's something ringing in my head, but I didn't really keep track of call signs.
He was,
At the beginning.
anyway, just thought I'd throw it out there.
Look, all of you have an email list on your email I sent to you.
Yes.
There's nothing preventing you, and it's free, 40 minutes, for you to organize your own Zoom meeting. I only have about 100 camps I have to worry about. And I'm going to get through over the next couple
That's great though. I love it.
months. I will get through the rest of folklore. So it's really up to you to try to keep yourself together.
Yep.
Okay.
And I'm sorry we missed a couple of people. I think this one went very well. I think the interaction between you all was one of the better sessions that we've had. I'm sorry that a couple people didn't show up who should have showed up. One of whom being Peter Crummy, who was your XO, Ed.
Yeah, is he alive?
He is alive and living in Florida.
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, for the rest of you folks, I think I mentioned that we built that camp. So you'll be getting a letter about back rent. Okay? No hard feelings.
Put it on the cuff.
I just wanted to say, I'm Ed's wife, but I just wanted to say that you were talking about how crazy you all were. First of all, thank you very much for your service. But after he got out of Vietnam, he became a Navy SEAL for 24 years.
Oh, Lord.
Oh,
That is crazy.
That's great.
yeah.
Correct. I have a friend in Houston who was a Marine in Vietnam. And when his son went into the service, he reported to us that his son flunked the Marine IQ and therefore had to sign up for Special Forces. I suspect the answer was that the IQ test for the Marines, he scored too high.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you again, Mr. Sherman.
You are quite welcome. There are lots of resources up there on my website. Make use of them on the photos website, on the books website. Use that to communicate, use it to share information with.
I'm going to begin to do that. So wake me up. You woke me up. Thank you.
Very good.
Good to see you again, Roger.
Good
Yeah,
to
good to see
talk
you,
to
Bill.
all of y'all.
See you all later.
Memories are they kind of correspond, don't they?
Well, that's the good thing about this. There's people together that serve at the same time. They can work out the problems, whether or not that tattoo is removed or sewn over or whatever else.
That tattoo was removed. Trust me.
Okay, now what?
Wait a minute.
I'm gonna stop the recording here. So